Hi, I'm Raylene, and welcome to Khaleesi's Clues. Today's video is going to be about the Mirri prophecy. Season 8, Game of Thrones. Will we finally see the completion of this prophecy? Are we actually going to see the return of Khal Drogo? This guy right here? I don't know. I'll let you decide. This is a theory video based off of both books and show clues. This video may contain spoilers for those who are not up to date with the show and books. This is actually one of my favorite theories to talk about. I've had this theory for a very long time. I have commented on numerous YouTube sites and Facebook fan sites about this theory. I've thought of thousands of ways to write it down and tell it to other people, but I think the easiest way for me to do this video is for me to just come out and tell you exactly what I think this theory is planning to work out to be, and then back it up from that point with all the facts and the clues that I have come up with from the show and from the books. So let me break it down. Mirri Duur's prophecy that she gives to Dany, she says, when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and the mountains blow in the wind like leaves. The last part is left out of the show. When your womb quickens and you bear a living child, then he will return. So, as far as I think, I do not believe we will see the return of Khal Drogo. I do not believe that this prophecy is about the return of Khal Drogo. I do not believe it is about Dany seeing Khal Drogo in the afterlife. I believe very strongly that we will actually be seeing the return of Rhaego. Yeah, you heard it right. Rhaego. Her stillborn son, supposed stillborn son. I've got a lot of clues and a lot of facts to back it up from the books and the show. So I guess if you're still with me, let's break it down and back it up a bit. From the first time I ever read the books, the part where Dany gave birth to Rhaego, it never set right with me. It's something that really stuck with me. And something didn't seem right about the whole situation. And so I kept reading, and I kept kind of going back and rereading the birth. And I started noticing certain things about clues or the way things were phrased in the words and everything. And so it started to dawn on me that I don't believe that Rhaego is dead, that I believe that he has been actually possibly saved and scurried off to another location. This theory actually led me to two other theories, one that is tied to the beginning of the book and one that is tied to the end of the story that we have not seen yet. Possibly, hopefully, see in season 8 and in the final books. So, but I'm going to give you this middle prophecy first because this was the one that made me actually start really looking at different clues. I'll leave the other two theories for other videos. So hopefully if you like what I'm saying in this one, hopefully you can tune into those other two videos. So let's start to clues that were prior to the birth of Rhaego. In the books, first there was a mention from Dany. She was on her horse and she was noticing that the Lázarine people looked strikingly similar to the Dothraki. And she had mentioned either, I don't know if she was talking to Jorah or if she was just thinking in her head that if she had not been with the Dothraki as long as she had, that the Lázarine people could have passed as Dothraki, that they looked very similar. So to me, that was like a clue as of that possibly her newborn child could have been sent off with the Lazarene people later on in the story, of course, and would have blended well because of his coloring, because of his features, that he could have been hidden amongst the Lazarene people and scurried off to safety. There was another clue. The next clue that I noticed was once Dany encountered Mirri Maz-Duur, and this is in the book, I believe also, is that she had asked her, what her experience was with birthing children, because of course she was going to be in need of someone to help her. She was almost full term, and she knew her time was going to be coming close. And Mirri Maz-Duur's statement to Dany was, "I have never lost a babe." That to me says that she had plenty of experience delivering babies, and she had never lost a child yet. And that's a pretty good record, I would think, for times back then when, women had a really hard time having children. So I took that as another clue. There was another clue from Viserys, her brother, who, and this was actually in the show and in the books, where it was when Dany was eating the heart, and the Dothraki ladies were chanting Sound that Mounts the World, and Dany was getting so much attention and so much praise for doing such a good job, and they were proud of that she was pregnant, and Viserys was getting so jealous of the attention Dany was getting, and he looked at Jorah and he said, he will never be a true dragon. And to me, again, I think that's another hint of the fact that yes, he is a true dragon. The other hint that was in the books was a part when Dany was talking to her unborn child, Rhaego. He was in her stomach, and this was, I believe, after one of Viserys' temper tantrums of waking the dragon and being mean to Dany. And she had whispered to her child, "You are the dragon, the true dragon." And that George R.R. Martin has in italics in the book, that he stresses that sentence. So again, I find that as a very big clue as the fact that Rhaego is something very important, and he is a dragon. He's not just some child that's going to be born. This is somebody important. This is the stallion that mounts the world. This is somebody that has been prophesized for a long time of importance to come into this world and do something very important.
He won't be a real Targaryen. He won't be a true dragon.
Okay, so now I'm going to get to the part about the actual birth of Rhaego. And there's a lot of clues that I think in that part. And I'll try not to ramble. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous in my first video, so, but I'm really excited about this part. So the birth of Rhaego. I believe that Mirri Maz-Duur has played on Dany's words. When Dany asked for Mirri Maz-Duur to save Drogo's life, and as we can see in the show, she did save his life, but it was not the life that Dany was expecting. It's kind of like that old joke where you see the leprechaun and he says, or the genie, that's what it was, a genie, and they grant you one wish, and you say, "Oh, I wish for $1 million." And they say, "Okay, wish granted." And they say, "Poof," and you get 1 million deer. You should have wished for $1 million. You should be very specific. And I think that's the big part that Dany did not learn from the first time dealing with Mirri Maz-Duur. She asked for her to save Drogo's life, and she didn't get exactly what she asked for. She got his life saved, but it was not the life that, it was not a quality of life. It was not Drogo's life. So the conversation on the show, in the books, it's a little more vague, but it's basically the same. What the show did is it kind of combined two parts of the book and put it into one smaller section, of course, for the show, to condense the timing, I'm sure, and make the same point. Is that the conversation between Mirri Maz Duur and Dany is that Dany asks Mirri Maz Duur, what about my child? How is it that my child, died? And Mirri Maz Duur tells her, oh, he was scaled and he was deformed and lizard-like and grave worms. And she says, my child was strong and he was kicking to come into this world. How could that be? But the last words she actually says to Mirri Maz Duur in the show was, show me what I bought with my son's life. And my son's life was the last three words. Even though she's talking about Drogo earlier in her statement, the last three words she said was my son's life. And then in the show, it cuts to Jorah and Dany talking about not trusting Mirri Maz Duur, and she said, I have nothing left to fear of her. They go to where Drogo is. He's laying on the ground. Dany rushes over and goes to hold him. And Mirri Maz Duur looks at Dany and Drogo and says, he lives. He lives. That was the first words she said after Dany's final words to her was, my son's life. And she says, he lives. So that, to me, is a huge, huge clue as to the fact that Rhaego is alive, because Mirri Maz Duur is, again, playing on Dany's words. Even though we're looking at the screen, we're seeing Dany and Drogo, Mirri Maz Duur is actually referring to Dany's last words, which was her son. And then Dany says to her, this is not life. And Mirri Maz Duur, and she says, when will he return to me as he was? So again, she does not say, when will Drogo return to me as Drogo was? Because if she had asked that, she might have gotten a very different answer from Mirri Maz Duur. Because Mirri Maz Duur, still playing on Dany's words, continuing with the he, comes back with the big prophecy of, when the suns rise in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and the mountains blow in the wind like leaves, when your womb quickens and you bear a living child, that's when he will return. So it's all the he is, and like I said, I do not see any way, shape, or form that Drogo could actually come back. I mean, he's been burned. He's gone. He's gone. But I do believe we're going to see the return of Rhaego. Now, on to the really, really popular statement that Mirri Maz Duur said to Dany was, only death pays for life. And I think this is the statement that gets a lot of people believing that Rhaego has died. Only death pays for life. They believe that Rhaego's life, Drogo's life, and Mirri Maz Duur's life is actually what enabled Dany to hatch the 3 dragon eggs. And I see it a little differently, because I think of it this way. I know that people really have a tendency to think that there must be a blood sacrifice in order to hatch a dragon. But I don't and maybe I've got my rose-tinted goggles on. I don't know. I don't think there is a blood sacrifice necessary. I really don't. Blood and fire, that's like their family name. I think blood is meaning like their blood. They have to have the right type of Targaryen to actually be able to hatch a dragon, because not all Targaryens were able to hatch dragon eggs. Some of them never hatched in their cribs, and I don't ever remember hearing anything in any of the stories about a blood sacrifice having to happen to hatch a dragon egg. I mean, I heard of the Targaryens putting the egg in the crib with the babies, and so that they could bond, but I never ever heard of any type of ritual done to hatch a dragon egg. And I mean, I understand that the Dany's eggs that she had, they were old and petrified, they were turned to stone, but I still don't think that there was 3 lives that were taken for those 3 dragon eggs to hatch. I think what hatched those eggs, I think, was the fact that Rhaego was born. The magic of the Targaryens is getting stronger. Dany is becoming of age. She is a woman. She is knowing her own powers now, and she's in closer to a shy, which there is more magic in a shy. There's another factor that's over there that can increase her power that I'll talk about in another video. And the birth of Rhaego is something I think that has tenfolded the power of magic for the Targaryens. The statement, only death pays for life, and how Dany repeats that to Mirri Maz Duur when she's putting her on the pyre, is she says, yes, you taught me, only death pays for life. And I think what Dany learned from Mirri Maz Duur was exactly that if you do a crime, if you commit a crime against somebody, Drogo, and according to Dany, she believes her son, her unborn child, she believes that he's dead. She believes Mirri Maz Duur is responsible for the death of Drogo and for the death of her child. And therefore, she's going to punish Mirri Maz Duur with death for taking their lives. It's like an eye for an eye. And we see that again later when Dany is going through and she sees the children that are crucified, and she ends up crucifying the same amount of masters as they had crucified children. It was only death pays for life. They are paying for the life they took. And I think that's where she really is applying that statement. And like I said, I don't think birthing the dragons, I don't think that is anything tied to black magic. And I think, if they do have a sacrifice, I think that's like black magic. I think that it would be done for something not good. And I want to think that the dragons are really good. I want to think that the Targaryens are good, not that they're innocent or that they haven't done bad things, but that the dragons are good and they're here to fight against the evil. So that's my thought about that. As for where could Rhaego go? Where could he be? So if he is born, where would he be? And I think that Mirri Maz Duur has, after he was born, I think she must have, and this is a complete assumption, I believe that she must have had given him to one of her trusted Lazarene ladies. It would have to be a milk mother. The Khalazar was being broken up. There was a lot of chaos going on. They were, the Khals were, fighting over who was going to be Khal. They were, taking people off. They were killing people. But I believe that Mirri Maz Duur gave the child to one of the Lazarene women. And I think they probably took him to the R'hllor temple, the Red Temple in Volantis. I think and Melisandre's heading there season 8. So I think we're going to see Melisandre's might tie in, her storyline might tie in to Rhaego's storyline. I think Melisandre might be onto a little of this too. I think I'm seeing a little bit of, almost like a little bit of sadness in her when she's looking at Dany and looking at Jon. I think she knows there's something coming, and I think she knows there's truth, and I think that's why she's heading off to Volantis. I think Melisandre has been used quite a bit by the Rohalor people. I guess that's for another video. But anyways, I think the Rohalor temple, they have the Fiery Hand army. I think they've been waiting and preparing for Rhaego. And there's actually just about 2 other things I want to bring up. One was another clue that I thought of was the House of the Undying. When Dany went into the House of the Undying and she's given all the visions of, she sees Rhaegar and she sees the Red Wedding and she sees all these different things. And everybody always, they go through and they say, well, this part is for Westeros, the woman that's being ravaged by the 5 dwarves. And then the Red Wedding, of course, that one was really pretty obvious. And then the Blue-Eyed King was supposedly, that cast no shadow, that was supposedly Stannis. But then every time they get to the part where it's, it's supposedly supposed to be Rhaego, but he's like a full-grown man, and it's always discounted as, that's what could have been. She's seeing a vision of what could have been. But that seems to be the absolute only part of the whole House of the Undying vision that is ever discredited or not a possibility of coming true. And my point is, I think that it most definitely is something that's going to come true. I think she is most definitely going to see him. And when it says a man full grown, we have to remember that back then you were very young. You were very young to be considered a man full grown. Bran, I think, was 8 or 10, I think, when he was saying that his name day had just passed and that he was nearly a man full grown. And I think he was either 8 or 9 at that time. And that, not saying that he was a man full grown then, but it was soon, that he was saying he would soon be a man full grown. And I'm expecting that Rhaego would be about 10 years old when he returns, possibly older. I would love it to be older, because if he's older, we could get something like really, really cool that I think the fans would absolutely love. They would love it. I think they would go crazy, because if he's actually a little bit older, they could actually get Jason Momoa to play his role. I mean, they could shave the beard off, color in the eyebrow scar, remove the tattoos, and in the books he's supposed to have blonde hair. In the show, he had the dark hair when it showed him with Khal Drogo, when Khal Drogo was holding him. But they could also do it like that. They could have it with the little blonde highlights, and we could have a little bit of Drogo and Dany mixed. And so, I think the fans would go crazy. And we all know that Dan and Dave, these are my little stick guys. Dan and Dave, they love Jason. And the fans love Jason. We all love Jason. Who doesn't love this guy? So, but that would be a great thing to see him actually come back into the picture. So anyways, my last statement, last clue, or actually kind of my last question, is, what would you think? I mean, I know what I think. What would you think about Rhaego possibly being the prince that was promised? Got to think about it, because he was born amidst smoke and salt. The comet was in the sky. He's of the correct bloodline that was predicted by the Woods Witch. So he's got all of the qualities. And I believe he was able to wake dragons from stone, because it wasn't until after his birth that the magic was strong enough that Dany was able to get those eggs to hatch. It's like everything's coming around, at least in my eyes. And like I said, I've got a video coming up for an end prophecy that involves Rhaego. And I have a beginning video that ties in to the Rhaego prophecy too. So anyways, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comments section. I would love to hear them. I love talking about this. This is like my favorite story in the world. I'm like a #1 fan of this guy. He's amazing. He does such an amazing job with this story. It drives me crazy. My husband thinks I'm crazy. I live, breathe, and eat this. So, like I said, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section. I will definitely try to answer anybody and everybody's question. If you want to hit the like and subscribe button.
You asked for life. You paid for life. He lives. Only death pays for life. Dany enforcing the only death pays for life rule. Is it just me, or does her clothing look a little red underneath that robe? Jason tweeted while pictured with Dany, "I am coming."
Okay, so if you have any questions or comments, please leave it below, and please hit the like and subscribe. I do have a Facebook site, so if you'd like to comment on there or visit that, that would be fine. It's Khaleesi Clues. Also, I have a website, khaleesiclues@gmail.com. I'm just starting out, so I'm hoping to be posting more pictures and more videos and thoughts that come up, and I'm hoping to get better at these videos. I get really nervous, and I hope you enjoyed the information, as I really love talking about it. Thanks. Hi. I just wanted to go over a couple of things that I missed in my Is Rhaego Alive video. There was, I believe, a casting call set for season 8 for a 10-year-old boy. I believe that it said that he had to have a distinctive face and that he could own every scene that he was going to be in. And I think he was supposed to be in 3 episodes. So I was hoping that it might be a possibility for the casting call for Rhaego. Although I've been wrong about it before, because a couple years ago when they had a casting call for a newborn, that I thought would possibly be a flashback of the Mirri Duur hut scene of Dany giving birth and possibly, passing the baby off, but it ended up being for baby Jon. So I could be wrong, but still crossing my fingers, and I'm really hoping that this could possibly be the role for Rhaego. But I guess we'll have to wait and see till season 8.
Here's an image of the casting call that I got off of Wiki of Thrones from Watchers on the Wall.
The last couple of things I wanted to mention that I forgot to in my previous recording was the hints or the clues that I thought were important from the birth of Rhaego. One of the things that I thought was very strange in the books and the show was the fact that there was no remains, none. There was no witnesses. There literally was no proof that Rhaego was stillborn other than the words of Mirri Duur. And as Jon Snow had pointed out in season 7, and you think that this woman is trustworthy or credible, you actually believe her? And my answer is absolutely not. I think she's absolutely lying about Rhaego. The fact that he was lizard-like and winged and full of grave worms, and that was all made up. I think it's kind of similar to the Tyrion story, where they said he was scaled and you know, had a tail, and all the different things that they had said he was, like a monster. And like the Red Viper said, whenever he went to see him, he was just a little baby, maybe a little bit larger head, he said, but just a little baby. So I think a lot of this, and not saying that they haven't had those deformities in their, line of the Targaryens before, but then again, who knows? I think in the history book, if I remember right, there was one that had delivered a dragon-type baby, and but again, it was like just rumors. But I'm sure there's probably other ones in there that did have deformities from their incestuous bloodline. So, but anyways, and there was the fact that there was no evidence and no proof, no witnesses. And then the other thing that struck me really strange was the fact that Dany did not demand to see her whatever remains were left of Rhaego for some type of closure. She did not ask if he had been buried or burned, as the Targaryen and Dothraki do. She didn't mention them at all. And I think that's strange, because you better believe it, if I am going into labor and I go in knowing my child is kicking and strong, and I go into labor and, go out of consciousness and then come back, and my doctor tells me that my baby died and I'm just supposed to take his word for it, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a big problem. And I can't imagine that would happen.
Jon to Dany, and you consider her to be a reliable source? How disappointing. You weren't a monster, just a little baby.
Okay, so the last, one of the last things I want to bring up about the strange things that I thought were very kind of suspicious during the Rhaego death was the fact that when it came time for Dany to place all of Drogo's most prized possessions on his funeral pyre, they placed like his clothing, and I believe there was a sword and a belt that was like gold, and just all these prized possessions that he loved, and weapons, and all these different things, but not his child's remains. That was one of his most prized possessions. Dany, his child, unborn child, and whatever else. But I can't imagine if I had gone through basically 9 months of labor, or 9 months of pregnancy, and then lose the child at that late of a term and not ask for the remains, whether it is nothing but bones, if it is grave worms, if it is dust. I want those remains. I want to hold those remains. I want to say my goodbye to those remains. I want proof. I want to be at peace. I want to put my child at peace. And what better place for my supposed dead child's remains to be with other than my sun and stars, the love of my life, with him? Why? Why were those remains not placed with Khal Drogo? If Rhaego was really supposedly dead, there's no way that I couldn't do it. There's no way. It wouldn't happen. And that's why it just never sat with me. If George R.R. Martin can be so detailed of a writer that he can think of the way Jaime was holding Cersei's foot when they were born, and basically the only way that you could be born would be Cersei coming first, Jaime being the younger brother, because if Jaime had come first, in order for him to be holding her foot, he would have come out breech, and then that means she would have came out breech, and in that day and age, that would have been probably the death of their mother, a breech child, too, on top of it. So if he's detailed enough to think of that, I can't imagine that he would leave out such a huge detail of baby Rhaego's remains and the burial and the feelings that Dany would be going through. It's just impossible to me. I don't see it. And that's what convinced me the most of the fact that Rhaego was actually alive, and that part of that was left out or just breezed over because it's like a clue to me. It's like a big clue. So that was the main thing.
This symbol will be part of another Rhaego theory coming soon. George R.R. Martin, you mastermind, you are the ultimate Mirri Duur.
One of the clues for this coming up season that I thought may hint to the fact that we possibly might be getting a flashback of the Mirri Duur scene was the fact that the Dothraki huts were pictured outside of the main filming studio where they filmed Game of Thrones. And I believe this is before filming actually started. And people were like, oh, it's probably huts that the Dothraki army that Dany brings to the north have set up outside of Winterfell. They're, probably, because Winterfell is not going to be able to hold the whole army. But I don't think they're going to be able to construct a little Dothraki hut outside of Winterfell because, number one, I don't think they'd have the same materials available. And number two, I don't think it would withstand the cold. Winter's there and the ground, I think they would have to have a totally different type of habitat. So I think it's basically one of two things. Either they were moving the huts, moving them around, or they're going to be using them. And I think the only thing that it could be would be a flashback. And the only thing I could think of that they need a flashback of what went inside those huts is the birth of Rhaego. So I thought that was a really big clue. And I'm hoping to see that this season. I know I had mentioned the vision Dany had in the House of the Undying of Rhaego full grown with the stallion and I think it was a fiery stallion for his banner. And a lot of people discount that as what could have been, a vision or a sight of what could have been in the House of Undying. But that's not the only vision she's had of him. If I remember right, she's had a couple of dreams of him also. I think one was right around when Quaithe came around. Of course, this is in the books, not in the show. They don't show the dreams in the show or anything like that. And they changed the vision of the House of the Undying a lot. So, but yeah, in the books, I believe she's had 2 other dreams of Rhaego. And like in the books and in the show, she had made this statement to, at least it was in the show, it was to Zaro Doxos, I think that was his name, how that her dreams, that she's different and that her dreams come true. And that was another huge clue to me because she has had dreams of Rhaego, and I believe she has the gift of sight. Dany has true dreams, and the fact that she's dreamed of Rhaego and plus seen him in the House of the Undying, plus all of the other clues. And like I said, I believe I have a theory that goes from the very beginning of the books and the show that ties Rhaego in, and I believe I have an end theory for season 8 and for the last of the books. So I think I'm onto something, and if you hang around, maybe you can help me figure more out, and maybe we can, pitch together and find more clues. So thanks.
They shall come day and night to see the wonder born. Remember, the magic is stronger in Dany's presence.